The ballroom of Ashwick Hall glowed like a starlit dream, its chandeliers casting prisms over a whirl of silk gowns and polished boots. Lady Eleanor Pembroke stood near the terrace doors, her sapphire gown a quiet defiance of the ostentatious ruffles around her. At 24, Nora was no dewy debutante. Her raven hair was pinned in a simple chignon, her blue-grey eyes scanning the crowd with a predator's precision. The court of Thornfield was a battlefield of whispers and wiles, and Nora, dubbed the Silent Lark, was its keenest observer. Courtiers confided in her, mistaking her silence for meekness, but she hoarded their secrets like a dragon its gold. Tonight, though, she felt the weight of a gaze she couldn't ignore. Prince Theodore Langley, Theo to his admirers, Scandal to his foes, lounged against a marble pillar across the room, his chestnut hair rakishly tousled, his hazel eyes glinting with reckless charm. He was Thornfield's favourite rogue, a second son whose duels at dawn and trysts in moonlit alcoves fuelled endless gossip. His dark green coat hugged his broad shoulders, his cravat just shy of proper, and his smile promised ruin. Nora's stomach tightened. She'd seen that look before, on men who thought her a riddle to solve. She had no time for games, not when her father's gambling debts loomed like a noose, her sister Maggie's dowry non-existent. Yet when Theo pushed off the pillar, his stride cutting through the crowd like a blade through silk, she knew evasion was futile. "Lady Eleanor," he said, his voice warm as brandy over embers. He bowed, the gesture teasing courtly grace. "Dance with me." It was a command, not a request. Heads turned, the air hummed with speculation. Nora's mind raced. Refuse a prince, and she'd slight the crown. Accept, and she'd step into a snare. "I'd rather not stumble over your highness's notoriety," she said, her tone crisp as frost. A ripple of gasps. Theo's grin flashed, sharp and delighted, like a wolf scenting a chase. "Come now, my lady, one dance won't shatter your virtue." "Your history suggests otherwise," she retorted, her chin lifting. The crowd tittered, fans fluttering like startled birds. Theo laughed, a rich, rolling sound that sent a shiver down her spine. "A challenge, then, shall we?" She hesitated, cursing the spark of curiosity in her chest. To refuse now would be cowardice, and Nora Pembroke was no coward. She placed her hand in his, her fingers steady despite the warmth of his grip. The orchestra launched into a waltz, and Theo pulled her into the dance, his hand at her waist firm, his body a breath too close. "You're not what I expected," he murmured, his breath brushing her ear. "And you're precisely what I dreaded," she shot back, matching his steps with practiced ease. He chuckled, his eyes gleaming. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Tell me, Lady Eleanor, why do they call you the Silent Lark?" "Because I listen," she said, her voice low, "and I don't waste words on rogues." His grip tightened fractionally, his smile turning predatory. "Then I'll have to prove I'm more than my title." The waltz spun them through the ballroom, a whirl of candlelight and whispers. Nora felt the weight of every stare, King William's stern gaze from the dais, Lady Beatrice Harcourt's venomous glare, the courtier's eager speculation. Theo moved with effortless grace, his presence commanding, yet his eyes never left her. It was unnerving, intoxicating, and utterly dangerous. As the music slowed, he didn't release her. Instead, he leaned closer, his voice a conspiratorial whisper. "Meet me in the rose garden at midnight. I have a proposition." Her heart stumbled. "I'm not one of your conquests, Your Highness." "This isn't about conquest," he said, his gaze unnervingly earnest. "It's about survival, yours and mine." The final notes faded and he stepped back, bowing with a flourish. The crowd applauded, but Nora barely heard it. Her pulse raced, her mind a tangle of suspicion and intrigue. She should walk away, forget his words, his eyes, his reckless promise. But as she curtsied and turned toward the terrace, she knew she'd be in the rose garden at midnight. The rose garden of Ashwick Hall was a labyrinth of shadows, its blooms heavy with scent and secrets. Nora slipped through the wrought iron gate at midnight, her charcoal cloak blending with the darkness. Her heart pounded, each step a rebellion against her better judgment. Prince Theo was a storm in human form, charming, unpredictable, dangerous. His words, survival, had hooked her, but she wasn't fool enough to trust him. Not yet. She paused by a marble fountain, its soft gurgle masking the rustle of her skirts. A figure emerged from the gloom, his cravat loosened, his dark coat unbuttoned, revealing a glimpse of linen and the strong column of his throat. In the moonlight, his hazel eyes were softer, stripped of their usual mockery, but no less intense. "You came," he said, his voice low, almost surprised. "Against all reason," she replied, folding her arms. "What's this about survival, Your Highness?" He paced, his boots crunching on gravel, his hands raking through his hair. "My father's patience is thinner than a beggar's purse. He demands I wed by the autumn equinox ball, 6 weeks hence. If I don't choose a bride, he'll bind me to Princess Lavinia of Valoria, a woman who'd sooner poison my wine than share my bed." Nora's lips twitched, despite herself. "A match forged in hell, then," he shot her a wry glance. "Precisely. Lavinia's father wants a foothold in Thornfield, and my father wants an alliance. I'd rather be exiled than pawned off for politics." She arched a brow. "And how does this concern me?" Theo stopped pacing, facing her squarely. "I need a fiancé. A temporary one. Someone clever enough to fool the court, bold enough to face its claws, and trustworthy enough not to betray me. In short, I need you, Lady Eleanor." Her breath caught, a sharp, incredulous laugh escaping her. "You're mad. You want me to pretend to be your betrothed?" "I do," he said, his gaze steady. "Play the part until I can secure my freedom, through a diplomatic loophole or a scandal of my own making. In return, I'll settle your father's debts and ensure your sister's prospects. A dowry for Margaret, a future for your family." Nora's mind spun. The offer was lunacy. Tempting, ruinous lunacy. Her father's creditors were circling, their demands relentless. Maggie, sweet and 18, deserved a chance at a match untainted by their family's shame. But to tie herself to Theo, even falsely, was to dance on a razor's edge. "Why me?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "There are dozens of ladies with prettier faces and emptier heads. Why the silent lark?" "Because you see through the court's masks," he said, stepping closer. "You hear what others miss, and because you don't swoon at my title or my smile. I need an ally, not a lovesick girl." She studied him, searching for deceit. His eyes held hers, unflinching, and for a moment she glimpsed something beneath the rogue's facade, a man trapped, fighting for control of his fate. It stirred something in her, a dangerous kinship. "And when this charade ends?" she asked. "My reputation will be ashes. No man will touch a woman jilted by a prince." "I'll protect you," he vowed, his voice fierce. "You'll emerge unscathed with wealth and security. I swear it on my honour." She snorted. "Your honour's been questioned in every tavern from here to Valoria." His grin was fleeting but genuine. "Then trust my self-interest. I need you, Nora, and I don't fail those who stand with me." The use of her nickname startled her, a breach of formality that felt oddly intimate. She turned away, staring at the fountain's rippling surface. Her father's letters from creditors flashed in her mind, harsh ink, harsher threats. Maggie's hopeful eyes, dreaming of a season she'd never have. This was a lifeline, wrapped in thorns. "Very well," she said at last, facing him. "But I have conditions. No liberties. Your hands stay where they belong. No lies. I want the truth, always. And if you cross me, Your Highness, I'll ruin you before you ruin me." Theo's smile was slow, dangerous, like a cat stretching before a pounce. "Agreed, my lark. You drive a hard bargain." "Don't call me that," she snapped, though her pulse quickened. "Why not? It suits you. Quiet, but ready to soar." He extended a hand. "Partners, then?" She ignored his hand, lifting her chin. "Allies, nothing more." His laugh was soft, warm. "Allies it is. We start tomorrow. Be ready for the court's claws." As he melted into the shadows, Nora stood alone, her heart a drumbeat of dread and defiance. She'd just wagered her future on a rogue prince. God help her, she hoped she wouldn't regret it. The morning after the Rose Garden packed, Ashwick Hall's breakfast room buzzed like a hive, its long mahogany table laden with silver tureens and gossip. Lady Eleanor Pembroke entered with her head high, her sage-green muslin gown simple yet striking against the court's garish silks. At 24, she was accustomed to being overlooked, but today every eye followed her, some curious, some envious, all ravenous for scandal. The silent lark was about to sing a dangerous tune. She'd barely slept, her mind tangled with Theo's proposition and her own reckless agreement. A fake betrothal to a prince was a gamble that could save her family or ruin her forever. As she took her seat near the room's centre, she felt the weight of his presence before she saw him. Prince Theodore Langley strode in, his dark blue coat tailored to his broad shoulders, his chestnut hair catching the sunlight streaming through the tall windows. His hazel eyes found hers, a flicker of amusement in their depths, as if they shared a secret jest. Which, of course, they did. "Good morning, Lady Eleanor," Theo said, his voice warm and deliberately loud, drawing every ear. He took the chair beside her, ignoring the protocol that placed him nearer his father's end of the table. "You look radiant today." A murmur rippled through the room. Nora's pulse quickened, but she matched his smile with a cool one of her own. "Your Highness is too kind," she said, her tone just shy of sardonic. "Though I suspect you say that to all your breakfast companions." His laugh was low, rich, and far too charming. "Only the ones who intrigue me," he murmured, leaning closer as he reached for a scone, his arm brushing hers. The contact was fleeting but deliberate, a spark that set her nerves alight. She cursed her traitorous body and focused on the plate before her, spearing a slice of ham with more force than necessary. The court watched, forks poised, as if they were actors in a play. King William, at the table's head, narrowed his eyes, his grizzled beard framing a frown. Lady Beatrice Harcourt, seated opposite, toyed with her teacup, her blonde curls gleaming but her smile sharp as a blade. Lord Rupert Godwin, a lean man with a fox's cunning, observed from the sidelines, his dark eyes darting between Theo and Nora. Theo leaned back, his voice carrying. "I've decided to court Lady Eleanor," he announced, as casually as if commenting on the weather. "She's captured my attention, and I intend to pursue her properly." The room erupted in gasps and whispers. A fork clattered. Nora's heart thudded, but she kept her expression serene, sipping her tea as if Theo's words were no surprise. Inside, she was a storm of panic and resolve. This was the plan. Bold, public, unyielding, but the court's scrutiny felt like 1,000 needles. King William's voice cut through the din. "Court her, you say?" His tone was skeptical, his gaze pinning Nora like a specimen. "Lady Eleanor is unexpected." Nora met his eyes, her voice steady. "I'm flattered by His Highness's notice, Your Majesty. I trust my character will prove worthy of his regard." A bold claim, and the king's brow arched, but he said no more. Beatrice, however, was not so restrained. "How charming," she said, her voice dripping honey and venom. "Lady Eleanor, you must share your secret. How does a wallflower snare a prince?" The barb landed, but Nora was ready. "Perhaps, Lady Beatrice, some men value wit over ostentation," she said, her smile as sharp as her rival's. "But I wouldn't presume to speak for His Highness." Theo choked on his coffee, his eyes dancing with delight. "Well said, my lady," he murmured, loud enough for the table to hear. "Wit is a rare gem, and I've always preferred quality over flash." Beatrice's cheeks flushed, her fan snapping open. The courtiers tittered, and Nora felt a thrill of triumph, tempered by unease. She'd drawn blood, but enemies like Beatrice didn't forgive slights. Nor did men like Rupert, whose gaze lingered on her too long, calculating. As breakfast ended, Theo offered his arm, escorting her toward the garden terrace for their first public courting stroll. The court followed at a distance, eager for more fodder. Once out of earshot, Theo's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "You were magnificent, Nora. Beatrice is still licking her wounds." "Don't underestimate her," Nora warned, her hand resting lightly on his arm. "She's not just vain, she's vicious. And your father's no fool. He suspects we're playing him." "Let him suspect," Theo said, his grin reckless. "As long as we keep them guessing, we control the board. You handled that like a queen." His praise warmed her, but she pushed it aside. "Flattery won't make this easier, Your Highness. The court's already sharpening its claws." "Then we'll sharpen ours," he said, his eyes locking on hers. For a moment the charade felt real, his gaze too warm, his touch too steady. She pulled her hand away, needing distance. They paused by a rose trellis, the blooms a riot of crimson and white. Theo plucked a petal, twirling it between his fingers. "Tonight, there's a card party in the West Wing," he said. "Be there. We need to solidify this, and I want you to listen. You'll hear things I can't." Nora nodded, her mind already racing. "I always listen. But if I'm to be your spy, I need more than promises. What's your plan to end this charade?" His jaw tightened, the petal stilling. "I'm working on it. A diplomatic snag, a scandal, something to make Lavinia's father withdraw. Trust me, Nora." "Trust is earned," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Don't make me regret this." He studied her, then nodded. "Fair enough. Tonight, then." As they returned to the palace, Nora's steps were steady, but her heart was not. She was playing a dangerous game, and Theo's charm was a distraction she couldn't afford. Yet as they passed a shadowed alcove, she overheard a snatch of conversation, Rupert's low voice speaking to a stranger. The Valorian shipment arrives soon. Ensure it's secure. Her blood chilled. Valoria. The same kingdom tied to Theo's unwanted bride. Whatever Rupert was planning, it was no mere court intrigue. She glanced at Theo, but his attention was on a passing courtier. She'd keep this to herself for now. The Silent Lark had work to do. Lady Eleanor Pembroke stood before the great oak doors of Ashwick Hall's throne room, her heart a drumbeat in her chest. The summons from King William had come at dawn, delivered by a stone-faced footman, and Nora knew it was no mere courtesy. The court's whispers had reached the king's ears. Theo's bold declaration of courtship, her own sharp retort to Beatrice at breakfast, and now the Silent Lark faced the lion in his den. She smoothed her dove-grey gown, its modest cut a stark contrast to the court's flamboyance, and lifted her chin. If the king thought to cow her, he'd find her no trembling fawn. The doors swung open, revealing a cavernous chamber of marble and gold. King William sat on his throne, a hulking figure in crimson robes, his grizzled beard framing eyes that pierced like steel. Courtiers lined the walls, their murmurs a low hum, but the king's presence silenced all else. Nora curtsied deeply, her movements precise, and rose to meet his gaze. "Lady Eleanor Pembroke," the king said, his voice a gravely rumble. "My son claims you've ensnared his heart. I wonder if you're a pawn or a player in this game." Nora's pulse quickened, but her voice was steady. "I'm neither, Your Majesty. I'm a woman who values honesty and loyalty, qualities I hope to share with His Highness." A murmur rippled through the courtiers. The king's brow arched, his fingers drumming on the throne's arm. "Bold words for a lady of modest means. Your father's debts are no secret, nor is your family's precarious state. What do you seek from my son? Wealth? Power?" The accusation stung, but Nora held his gaze. "I seek only to be seen for my worth, Your Majesty. If Prince Theodore finds value in my character, that's his choice, not my scheme." A flicker of surprise crossed the king's face, gone as quickly as it came. "Character is well and good, but a prince's bride must navigate the court's vipers. Can you withstand their venom, or will you crumble?" "I've faced sharper tongues than most," Nora said, a hint of steel in her tone. "The court's claws don't frighten me." The king leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "We shall see. My son's whims are fleeting, but my dynasty is not. Prove your mettle, Lady Eleanor, or I'll find a worthier match for him." The dismissal was clear. Nora curtsied again, her heart racing, but her composure intact. As she turned to leave, she caught Lady Beatrice's smirk among the courtiers and Lord Rupert's calculating stare. The king's test was only the beginning. She found Theo waiting in the corridor, his dark blue coat unbuttoned, his chestnut hair mussed as if he'd been pacing. His hazel eyes lit with relief, then mischief. "You survived," he said, falling into step beside her. "I half expected father to have you chained in the dungeon." "Your confidence is inspiring," Nora said dryly, though her lips twitched. "He thinks I'm a fortune hunter or a fool, possibly both." Theo grinned, guiding her toward the palace library, a quieter refuge from the court's eyes. "You're neither, and he knows it. That's why he's rattled. You held your own, Nora. I'm impressed." "Don't be," she said, her tone crisp. "I'm here to save my family, not to bask in your admiration." His laugh was warm, unoffended. "Fair enough, but you'll need more than wit to keep the court convinced. Let's polish your performance." The library was a haven of leather-bound tomes and flickering candles, its tall windows casting golden light over oak shelves. Theo shut the door, the click loud in the silence, and Nora's nerves prickled. Alone with him, the air felt charged, his presence too large for the room. He pulled a book from a shelf, Courtly Manners and Graces, and handed it to her, his fingers brushing hers. "You're a natural, but the court loves polish. A softer smile, a coy glance. Try this." He demonstrated, his lips curving in a parody of a simpering grin. Nora arched a brow, mimicking his expression with exaggerated sweetness. "Like this, Your Highness?" He laughed, stepping closer. "God, no. Never hide that fire, Nora. It's what makes you, you." Her breath caught, his nearness unsettling. He was too good at this, too charming, too disarming. She stepped back, clutching the book like a shield. "You're too practiced at this game," she said, her voice low. "I'm not one of your conquests. It's not a game." he said, his voice softer, more serious. He leaned against the table, his eyes searching hers. I trust you, Nora, more than I've trusted anyone since I learned trust is a fool's wager. The admission startled her, a crack in his roguish facade. Who hurt you? She asked, her voice gentle despite herself. He looked away, his jaw tightening. A girl, long ago, Cassandra. I was young, foolish, thought love was enough. She chose a richer suitor and left me to the court's laughter. He forced a smile. A lesson in keeping my heart locked. Nora's chest ached, seeing the boy beneath the prince. I'm sorry, she said, but I'm not her. I won't betray you, Theo, not if you keep your word. His gaze returned to her, warm and unguarded. I will. You're different, Nora. You see me, not the crown. That's why I need you. The air thickened, their closeness a tangible thing. His hand reached for hers, then paused, respecting her boundaries. She swallowed, her resolve wavering. We should focus, she said, turning to the book. Teach me your courtly tricks, your highness. He nodded, the moment breaking. Right. Lesson 1. A glance can say more than words. Watch. He tilted his head, his eyes smouldering with mock adoration, and Nora laughed despite her. Ridiculous, she said, but she tried it, letting her gaze linger on his, her lips curving slightly. His breath hitched, and for a moment the jest felt real. Well done, he said, his voice rough. You'll have the court eating from your hand. As they continued, trading quips and tips, Nora felt the danger of their charade. Theo was no mere ally. He was a man who could unravel her heart, and with Rupert's Valorian plot lurking, she couldn't afford to lose focus. The silent lark had to stay sharp, or they'd both fall. The autumn air was crisp with the scent of pine and earth as the royal hunt gathered on Thornfield's western moors, a spectacle of velvet cloaks and prancing horses. Lady Eleanor Pembroke adjusted her emerald riding habit, its tailored lines accentuating her slender frame, and steadied her mount, a spirited bay mare. At 24, she was no stranger to the court's displays, but today's hunt was more than sport. It was a stage for her and Prince Theodore Langley to cement their faux courtship. The silent lark was ready to play her part, though her nerves thrummed with the weight of Rupert's overheard words. Valorian shipment. Treason lurked, and she was caught in its shadow. Theo rode up beside her, resplendent in a hunter-green coat, his chestnut hair glinting under his hat. His hazel eyes sparkled with mischief, but a flicker of concern lingered, as if he sensed her unease. "Ready to dazzle the court, my lark?" he asked, his voice low, teasing. "Don't call me that," Nora said, though her lips twitched, "and I'm ready to survive this charade, your highness. Let's not tempt fate." He grinned, undeterred. "Fate's already tempted. We need a bold move to silence the doubters. Share my horse. Let them see us as a united front." Nora's stomach flipped. Riding double was intimate, scandalously so, but it would quell whispers about their courtship's authenticity. "Fine," she said, her tone brisk, "but if you let me fall, I'll haunt you." His laugh was warm, drawing curious glances from the courtiers. "I'd never let you fall, Nora. Come." He dismounted, handing his black stallion's reins to a groom, and helped Nora from her mare. His hands lingered at her waist, strong and steady, sending a jolt through her. She ignored it, focusing on the task. Theo mounted first, then pulled her up to sit before him, her back pressed against his chest. His arms encircled her to hold the reins, his breath warm against her ear. "Relax," he murmured. "You're stiffer than a governess at a ball." "Easy for you to say," she hissed, her heart racing, not just from the court's stares. "You're not the one risking ruin." "Nor am I," he said, his voice softer. "We're in this together." The hunt began with a blast of horns, horses surging across the moors. Theo guided their stallion with ease, his body a warm anchor behind her. The court watched, Lady Beatrice's glare sharp as a dagger, Lord Rupert's expression unreadable. Nora forced a smile, leaning into Theo's warmth to sell the act, though her pulse betrayed her. His scent, leather, spice, and something uniquely him, was maddeningly distracting. They galloped through a wooded glen, the pack ahead, when their horse suddenly reared, neighing in panic. The world tilted, branches blurring as the stallion bolted, veering toward a rocky ravine. Nora's breath caught, her hands gripping Theo's arms. "The bridle's cut," he shouted, his voice taut. Instinct took over. Nora leaned forward, her fingers finding the reine's frayed edge. "Hold him steady," she called, twisting to loop the remaining strap around her hand. She pulled hard, guiding the horse away from the drop. Theo's arm banded around her waist, his strength grounding her as the stallion slowed, then stopped, trembling. They slid to the ground, landing in a tangle of limbs, Theo's body shielding hers from the dirt. "Damn it, Nora," he gasped, his face inches from hers, his eyes wild. "You could have been killed." "So could you," she shot back, her heart pounding, not just from fear. His warmth, his protective grip, was too much. His hand lingered on her cheek, his thumb brushing her skin, and for a moment the world narrowed to his gaze. "I'd rather die than let you fall," he said, his voice rough. She pushed him away, breathless, scrambling to her feet. "Don't make promises you can't keep." He rose, checking the bridle, his jaw tight. This was no accident. Someone wanted us hurt, or worse. Nora's mind flashed to Beatrice's venom, Rupert's scheming. "Beatrice has motive," she said, "but Rupert's the one with secrets. I heard him mention a Valorian shipment." Theo's eyes sharpened. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I'm telling you now," she said, meeting his gaze. "We need proof, not rash action." He nodded, though his expression was grim. "Agreed. But we're doubling our guard. No more risks alone, Nora." The hunt returned, courtiers exclaiming over their miraculous escape. Theo played the devoted suitor, his arm around her, but his eyes promised a reckoning. That night, Nora slipped into Rupert's study, her heart pounding